Hello, everyone. Thank you for making the time to be here today, where we will be talking about the role of businesses, governments, and the education sector in addressing the global skills gap amongst youth. Learning through the lenses of two of our esteemed guests, Angela and Pooja. Thank you for being with us here today to share their insights with us on this matter. Now, before we begin, I'd like for us to break the ice a little bit, and I'd like for each of us to mention one skill or topic that you've been heavily invested in learning a bit more about these past few weeks. And maybe I could start. I've been recently into digital painting and digital art. Who would like to go next?
I can go. I've been into learning Python. I'm a social science major, but I'm very interested in harnessing technology for social good. So I've been trying to upskill myself on that.
It's amazing. How about you, Angela?
Yeah, Pooja and I can have a conversation much later, I think, about that. I will go with learning actually how to play the ukulele, which is the one behind me. Yeah, this is something that I've been, I guess, just watching YouTube videos to learn, and it's been fun to not have to do it for anything, like for work. And if I don't play very well, it's totally fine.
I really, really very much agree. Thank you both for sharing so much. I think this really just brings on the concept of lifelong learning and how important it is for our lives. And there's really a constant need now for reskilling and upskilling. And so this would now bring us to our first question. What are 2 or 3 key factors that you think both businesses and the academic sector must change in order for us to bridge the skills gap amongst youth? So a bit of a heavy one for our first question, but who would like to go first?
I can go first for that one. So you said a couple of factors, right? Yeah, I think the first one is we have to know that the purpose of education is to help young people to live a flourishing life. And a part of that life is going to be our work life. And that means in how the educators, for instance, design the curriculum, design the programs and the skills that young people need to learn. We have to think of it as the job market as having 2 sides, as having a demand side and a supply side, right? So we have to ask companies or organizations that are actually hiring our young people, what are the skills that they're looking for? So we don't end up in a situation where when young people enter the job market for the first time, they're finding that they've worked so hard to study and go through, the university and education system, only to end up with skills that are outdated or things that are actually no longer being valued in the job market, which is really possible right now. As you can kind of see with the pandemic, the digital economy has accelerated. And that means that the companies and how they operate have evolved very quickly, and the digital transformation agenda of organizations have fast forwarded very quickly throughout the last year. So all these things that we just discussed in terms of, what we are learning, right? That's also something that is outside of our volition. So whether or not those skills can get embedded into the curriculum and what students are actually learning will be one of the key factors, in securing the success of young people at work.
From my end, I think we could summarize the requirements as the 3 C's, which is when companies are really trying to address a skill gap, they need to address what capacity do they have to address the gap? Do they have the means, the mechanisms, resources, tools accessible and ready to be utilized by whoever's entering their system? Because when we welcome a young person into the company, you're welcoming them into your ecosystem. And we need to be completely assured that we don't have, let's say, a Gen Z walking in and nobody in there knows Canva. So that shows a lack of capacity on the company's end itself, that they don't know, they're not up to date. And so they're not in a position then to address the skill gap. First, we need to upskill ourselves as an organization to be able to upskill our current and future employees. The second one would be capability and how much they value lifelong learners. Some companies are okay with status quo. They just select a few people and they keep continuously upskilling them, especially those in leadership positions. What happens is then you create this vacuum where future leaders have to wait 10, 15 years down the line to be in that learning program. And that is not the outlook that we need right now. If we are going towards a digitized and accelerated world, that means learning, the capability to learn and opportunities to learn should be accessible to all, irrespective of the work level you come from. Otherwise, you're really losing out on capitalizing who should be leading tomorrow by excessively focusing on who's leading today. And lastly, the culture. We can say all of this, but gaining skills and spending time on it is, like I said, it is time spent. There is an opportunity cost. Does the company accommodate for it in the culture, or do they believe that it's an extracurricular activity? Usually, in my case, there's a conflict where there's a critical meeting, a critical event happening at work. The first thing they drop is a learning and development activity. They run to the other side. And if the company culture condones that and says, no, 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 it's at the bottom of the agenda, you can learn when you have time, then we are not going to find people who will be able to really take on that proactively, and it will always be at the bottom of the pit. So really, culture also plays an important role on how much time and capacity is given back to the employees to develop, whether it be their current ones or future, like the youth that they will potentially be hiring within the organization. So those three C's, which is capability, capacity, and culture.
Thank you both very much. I think those were very insightful answers indeed. And I can speak personally from experience as a young person. What you have just mentioned are not just theories, they're actually in the happening. There are a lot of people that I know that are actually in these situations. I know a lot of people that are currently in middle income or lower income families, where their parents or their families or the culture around them is not encouraging them to further pursue education or other opportunities that might be of benefit to themselves. And Angela, as well, you were talking about this gap between what students are being taught in university and what is then actually needed in the job market after they graduate. I think those are really relevant problems that really need to be addressed. And so we're looking forward to having businesses and companies such as yourself to further bring this into light. Now, Pooja, I do have a follow-up question. I know that you mentioned the topic of education is a privilege, and then you made it a point that good education needs to be accessible for everyone, regardless of income, especially for low and middle income families. They need to be given equal opportunities. So I'd like to know a bit more about how is your startup Ground Z, how is it working to achieve this? Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. So Ground Z is not just something that I came up with because I was very altruistic and I wanted to change the world. Of course, there is a bit of that, but for me, it was driven purely by my own personal life experiences, as well as a lot of fatigue on why the system works the way it does. I grew up in the UAE, and you know, when we think about the UAE, of course, it's the first catchword is development, how far we have come. But when it comes to equitable development, we're not that ahead of the game as we must be, because you know we have a large immigrant population. We go to the smaller schools, we go to the affordable universities, and it's almost like when we have to come out in the forefront and our skills are assessed, we don't know what we have to offer anymore in the market because we have not done anything extraordinary. The fees is really high in most of the top universities or top schools, leaving us with no other choice but to deal with whatever we can get. And that is not a lot. And for me, thankfully, again, the government of Sharjah offered a scholarship. I attended American University of Sharjah as a result. And because of the benevolence, I was able to move forward. But again, no student or no youth should be waiting for an act of benevolence to be able to access education. And that's what Ground Z wants to change. It is innovation and equality. If you see all of the top achievers in the world, be it Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, they all went to top universities or they just had a lot of money. They're intelligent, but they had two other things to, let's say, act as a safety net. And as a result, most of innovation is, again, it's monopolized by people who can take risks and who can fall back and then get back up, not by regular, ordinary humans and their families where they have to think about what they're going to put at the table for dinner or pay the bills. It's really not their concern. As a result of which, we have so much of brain drain where young people who want to change the world lose their ambition and motivation because there is no opportunities. Ground Z steps in here by creating a platform, an AI-powered platform that is both affordable, even though it's a tech startup, and it is accessible in the sense that innovation is, again, very much attached to just STEM. We cater to all audience, which is STEM, business track, as well as social science. Because this is another stereotype we have in the education system, where if you're not a STEM major, you're not intelligent enough to change the world. It's a very Asian outlook. I don't propagate it, but it is what it is. It's how people think. So it's two things that we're trying to tackle is this type of technology and learning tools should not be just for students who are able to pick themselves up and go to top universities alone or top schools alone. And the second one is innovation doesn't mean you leave behind students who are not interested in STEM. It's all about bringing all three interest areas together and creating this community of innovators with varying lengths so that they really create holistic solutions to world's problems, because the world's problems cannot be solved by one mindset. It requires different mindsets acting together. So that's where Groundsy steps in. But in reality, it's just a simple online platform. It's an innovation tool. And I think the beauty of it really lies in the fact that, like I mentioned, it takes into account every interest possible and every demographic possible. So we're just making it much more open to all.
Thank you very much. I think that's really incredible. And I personally think that there is a genius in every single individual. All we have to do is provide them with the right opportunity, an equal opportunity and environment for them to flourish and to thrive. And I think that's really admirable. Now, Angela, I do have a question for you as well. I know that you are a data enthusiast. And so I'd want to have a bit more of your opinion. How do you think we can ease the transition to a data-driven workforce, as you might call it, but while being as inclusive and equitable as possible, as Pooja mentioned? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely resonated with what Pooja shared. I think so much about who gets to succeed in the future of work and just in the world in general is about the opportunity set that you've been provided with, and there are many factors that are outside of our control. And definitely, I think now when we think about who will succeed in that future of work, our minds are going to somebody who works in STEM, right? And that might be someone who's a developer. And I've just done this experiment to ask people, like, yeah, how does that person look like? How do you, like, when you close your eyes and envision that person, are they a guy? Are they wearing a hoodie? Are they maybe like in front of a computer screen? Their face is lit by the computer screen. It's in a dark room, something like that, that sort of image. You can also even go on Google and just look up in the Google image search, like, how does that person look like? Like, who's a developer? Right now, I think we have some existing biases with that, like, who is a CEO when you look at the image, like maybe it's a man, right? Or who's a virtual assistant? That's somebody that's probably a lady. And so that's one dimension of that, is who can we actually even imagine to succeed, first of all? Yeah, because if we can't even imagine it, then it cannot happen. Yeah, if we don't see ourselves actually being the ones who can succeed, then it's not going to be us. We're not going to be the Elon Musks of the world, yeah, for whatever reason. And so for us, I think, so Eskwelabs is a data upskilling school based in the Philippines. And our mission is to democratize the future of work through data skills education. And a big part of that is looking at not of course, we also have data science programs and data science students, but we're creating pathways that are realistic for young people that are from lower middle and middle income countries, yeah, to go into jobs where they could increase their income from, let's say, $5 US an hour to something like $8 US an hour, which may not seem a lot in absolute terms, but percentage term, it's huge, yeah. And that's really something that could change the trajectory of someone's life and the lives of their families. And so what that actually looks like is actually meeting the learners where they are. So for instance, we have call center agents who are learners that learn data analytics and start to serve their clients in a different way as their current jobs, which is, picking up the phone for maybe like angry American customers who will call the company and demand something, and then that call gets sent to the Philippines. But now they actually get to serve that customer in a different way by providing data analytics, rather than sticking to the job where they were in, because those jobs are actually being automated by voice AI. right? Which I think some of us might have had tried, like if you have an Alexa, for instance, that is something that could automate someone who is in a call center job. Yeah, so those are type of activities that we focus on in the company. And I guess in the frame from a sustainability point of view, because I know this conference is really focused on that, is also thinking about how can we use these algorithms and these types of approaches that are applied within business that benefit businesses right now in very specific business use cases, and apply those for social impact. Because the same types of algorithms that are being used to, let's say, predict the credit default of a bank customer, those are also algorithms that could apply to predict deforestation, for instance, or to make recommendations to policymakers on new types of policies that could be introduced to stop the encroachment of, let's say, protected marine areas, right? So these are the types of, skills that are lacking in the nonprofit or in the impact sector, and particularly with sustainability, where data has been lacking. And so when we look at the inclusivity of the space, it's not just about who is doing it, right? Which is the dimension of like, are women going to be doing it? Are people from developing country going to be doing it? But there's also inclusivity aspect of what is it for? There is a lot of innovation that happens in the world right now. A lot of that is driven in these places where people coming from privilege, who are incredibly smart, are creating that innovation. But can that be applied to things like flooding risk in the Philippines, for instance, where every single year, right, like multiple typhoons happen and just wipe out communities? Right now, those tools and the knowledge and skills to actually make changes already exist, but maybe it's not for these communities where the challenge is being faced. So those are all the different dimensions, I think, of inclusivity that we think of. And that's why for Eskwelabs, we're very exciting nexus of all these different factors and these different opportunity areas where we can bring inclusivity to the space of a data-driven workforce.
Thank you very much, Angela. I think your last point was really, really powerful. It's not only enough for us to know what we're doing and how we're doing it, but rather why we are doing it. And I think this has really been a very insightful conversation. I'd really love to hear more. But in the interest of time, I'd like to dedicate one last minute to each of you. If there are any final remarks that you would like to say or conclude with before we end this session.
So from my end, I think I would urge everyone, when we think about a future that's sustainable, also think about a future that's sustainable, inclusive, and equitable. Most of the communities are left behind in the solution-making process. Let's not just be the leaders that lead for the sake of leading, but those who lead after listening to the needs of the community and let them take charge. We should be facilitating change and permitting communities that face the most amount of problems to come forth and take charge of the solution. And always keep that in mind, that it's very critical for the best solution to always be the most equitable and most inclusive one, to be the most beneficial one. So yeah, as you take charge, don't forget about those who need the solution, and don't put yourself at the center of it, put the community at the center of the solution.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pooja. I just want to riff off on that. I think I was thinking about when I was graduating from university and how anxious I was, because I felt like I was going through a quarter life crisis. I didn't know what to do with my life. And I mean, sometimes I still certainly feel like that. And it's a feeling that actually doesn't go away, unlike our parents who got to select sort of, one or two times, like, what do you want to do for the rest of their lives? And they don't really have to think about it again. I think that constant feeling of anxiety will always be with this generation, the younger generations, of really trying to find our place in the world, as so many different, macro factors like climate change is happening. So I just want to leave everyone with a quote that really helped me during that time, which is from Rumi. When I was young, I wanted to change the world. Now that I'm wiser, I want to change myself. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for those very powerful and inspiring words. It's been an amazing session, and we hope to hear more from you guys in the future as well. Thank you, everyone, to everyone who was watching, and have you all. I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye. Goodbye.